Okay. So this is an event put on by New York EM Student Council to help you guys figure out how to navigate VSLO and securing away rotations, how to apply, and all that good stuff. We are really lucky today to be joined by James, who is very kind to lend his time and wisdom to y'all today. So I'll give him a second to say hi and introduce himself.
Hi, introducing myself. My name's James. Um, Pleasure to be here. Glad to help. Since I'm a DO, I'll be kind of touching on a lot of the DO and IMG pertinent aspects of what Emily's bringing to the table.
Awesome. And most of you probably know me. I'm the chair of the New York EM Student Council. And yeah, you'll learn a little bit more about the both of us as we sort of talk through our experience as well. So let's just dive right in. Just some more background. So I am currently a fourth year med student at Weill Cornell. So I did my first sub-I at this home institution, which is actually a combined program between Cornell and Columbia, and I did that in July. And then I did my away rotation, which I got through VSLO at the University of Pennsylvania in August. So I just did mine those 2 months. And though I only did one away rotation, I applied to 9 and then selected one.
Yeah, and I'm James. I'm the fourth year at Toro. Um, if any of you are DO or IMG, then you know that we are kind of like the diaspora, and we don't necessarily have like a home institution. Um, it's rare, but it does sometimes happen where we might be bouncing around between like 8 different hospitals or something throughout one year. So mine was Harlem Hospital, but I actually didn't do my core there. I did my core at Kingsbrook, but my sub-Is I did at Coney Island, which is now South Brooklyn, Staten Island University Hospital, which is Northwell, and Staten Island, and then New York Presbyterian Queens. I applied to 4, but I had a kind of non-traditional path. So we'll go into that.
Yeah, hopefully between the two of us, we can cover a lot of experiences and different ways to secure ways. And James has a ton of experience even beyond the VSLO platform. So let's get into kind of the agenda for today. We'll start just by talking about aways in general, talking about slows, which is kind of the goal of your away rotation, other than practicing how to be an EM physician, how to choose, how to actually apply, accepting and rejecting and things like that. And we'll talk a little bit about, how to perform well. That could be a whole talk in itself, so we'll keep that part brief, but people are kind of always curious about that. And then we'll save some time for Q&A at the end to ask questions. All right. So why are aways important, particularly in EM?
What's up, homies? You're what is it?
Regina, I think you're unmuted.
Yeah. It just is auto unmute when you enter. We didn't do that to like flame you guys. It's just a setting.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. All right.
Thanks.
So away rotations basically are how you get your letter of recommendation in emergency medicine. They are by far, I think, the most important piece of your application, and it's supposed to be objective. So unlike a letter of rec, where somebody who knows and loves you is glowing about you free form, these are a standard format that the people who worked with you during your rotation all fill out, and it kind of gets put into this summary called a SLO. And aways are particularly important because, for those people who do have a home institution, home sub-Is are kind of seen as a little bit biased because your home institution probably wants to support you and, put you in the best light possible. So an away rotation is kind of more objective and people will say that that's probably the weightier of your slows and the one that people really look at. And it's also an audition. You are auditioning the program is auditioning you. By choosing a program as an away location, you are showing interest in that place, that program, even that location, like that geography. And so it kind of sends a signal to the types of things that you might be interested in. Anything to add?
And it is, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just gonna say, you can also think of this as like almost like a month-long interview. You will be meeting so many different people during that. So it's the best representation of you that a specific program can get. But also that's why the slows are so important because it's pretty comprehensive. Even though one person writes it, it's usually pulled from a lot of data.
Exactly. And like I said, this is really just going to be the center stage of your application. Um, the SLO. So it stands for Standardized Letter of Evaluation. Um, like we said, it's essentially the EM letter of rec, and you're kind of put into these tiers that are written on the SLO, and there's 4 levels that you can kind of be basically ranked in: top 10%, top third, middle third, and lower third. And it's those first 2 that you really, really want to aim for. The nomenclature gets really confusing because there isn't just one type of slow. Usually when people say slow, they're talking about that objective, ranking with these percentiles and, different criteria. But we can touch on briefly like the different types of slows that you might see. Essentially, when you submit your residency application, you can submit up to 4 letters. Typically you want about 2 of them to be the E-slow, which is the one that we're talking about, but you do have options to submit either more of those. If you did more away rotations, those are going to be the ones that programs are most interested in. But you also have the option to submit these other types of slows. So a slow for non-academic EM faculty. So meaning an EM physician that you worked with who works in a hospital that doesn't necessarily have its own residency program. And so it says here, an example would be a letter from the Midwest, would include the University of North Dakota and South Dakota. Both schools have EM rotations, but they don't have their own EM residency. It's kind of confusing, but I guess those would be considered non-academic. You can also get a slow from an EM subspecialty rotation. So if you did ultrasound, you did tox or some other subspecialty in EM, you can get a specific letter from there. And it doesn't just mean that you ask that program to write you a letter. There's like literally a specific form online that they can use that follows this standardized format. And then there's also the OSLO, so an off-service standardized letter of rec. So let's say there was somebody that you really loved working with on your like IM clerkship or something, or even research. They can sort of download this standardized format and also write you a letter. Some say this doesn't really matter to residencies. Honestly, I thought they were useful, and I had 2 sort of like more standard letters of rec in addition to my slows, and they often got mentioned in my interviews, so I thought they were useful as supplements. I wouldn't make them like the mainstay of your application, but if you have the space, it couldn't hurt.
I thought I'd mention a common question I get from my underclassmen, also people in my class, is how many slows, and yes, you can do 3. I mean, technically you can do 4. But something I actually spoke to a PD about, he said that 2 is like the gold standard, and just 3 make it like your application stronger. Actually, in most cases, it doesn't. They don't necessarily look at like 3 slows, like, oh my gosh, you're 30% stronger applicant or 60% stronger applicant. If anything, he said it could possibly hurt you. If you know your first 2 slows are solid, then that one kind of dilutes. If you got, let's say, top 3, top third, the next one says that you're middle third, then they're going to look at that one. So if you have a feel that the first 2 are solid, then you don't necessarily need to ask for a third. I would only do a third if whatever happens, I don't know, like you're busy, life happens, and you need to do do it again because you don't think you did well on the first slow, then it might help to have a third one locked and loaded, and then you don't have to share the other one.
That's a really great point. I wonder if I mentioned it here. No, but I like that you mentioned that because, you know, as students, you should remember that you really have to be on during these rotations. And so, like, that can lead to a lot of burnout. It's a lot of energy to be performing peak and being evaluated every day, which is really how it works. Like, typically, the people that you work with evaluate you every shift. And then that gets summarized into the slow at the end. And so, there definitely is a risk of not having a great slow. Um, Things have changed also a little bit post COVID. Like it used to be that that people did a lot more rotations on average, but they made a lot of changes after COVID about like equity and like spots, um, they don't want students like doing a million rotations, to kind of keep equity in mind as well. It is expensive. Um, yeah, I would say I've also heard that some people think it looks weird if you do a sub-I, if you do an away rotation and you don't submit a slow for it. I don't know if James, have you heard anything like that? Like if you do an away rotation, you should have a slow to show for it.
So I would say if it's between like prime time, July, August, September, then it's sus, right? Because like, why didn't you um submit it? But again, having two strong ones is better than not having one. And it kind of like they can ask about it, but it's better to have if you know you knocked it out of the park and you drop the ball on the other. It's better just to clear playing field and just like make sure you only have strong stuff on your application. They can ask about it in the interview, but this is what I heard from the PD at Northwell. Like he specifically said, two is great, and if you have three, then just pick the two best ones, and then you don't have to submit.
Agree. I think it makes sense. I think maybe not submitting one when you did away rotation in prime time could look a little sus and people might make assumptions, but it's still better probably than submitting a bad slow. Agreed. Okay. So when's the right time to ask for a slow, right? These won't automatically just like come at the end of your rotation. You kind of have to approach the program coordinators to let them know that you want a slow, and they'll probably ask you for certain materials to put that together for you. Um, Typically, like the program will probably be organized and like send an email to the rotators and be like, whoever wants a slow, like please send us this by this date. But it's always good to ask early and make sure that they know that you're looking for one, and not like finish your rotation and be like, hey, I need a slow. Um, we've kind of talked about numbers, but typically in each rotation, you'd get one slow. Um, we mentioned getting slows from non-residency programs. It's kind of like a different type of slow. And you can do it, but it's just not going to be weighed as heavily as the e-slow. And we also mentioned that you can get them from non-EM mentors just as a supplement, but it's just not really as weighted as heavily, especially if it was like during a clerkship. Probably better to do it from someone that you worked with later in med school and worked with really closely. Can you still submit a slow from an October rotation after ERAS applications are submitted? Will programs see it and or consider you or reconsider you? This is a really important question because it can be kind of a scramble even for programs to get all the slows out. Like there are some times that where like programs get the slow out after the application goes live, and that can be really frustrating for students. And like the programs must, of course, understand that even though the slow came in after applications open, like they still should look at it. So yes, they will look at it. Um, if it gets to a certain point, like typically ERAS goes live, I think at the end of September. If it's like November, they're going to look at it, but it probably didn't help you secure an interview. Like typically you want to have at least one slow in your application when you apply in order to get an interview. That's what I've heard. Um, and how do you recommend going against getting the best slows possible? We'll get to that later. Anything to add?
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, it locks in September 27th. Well, it doesn't lock in, but that's when it opens. So that's when you could still do a September and ask them, and usually they're like, okay, yeah, like we know it's coming September 27th. They can get it to you a little earlier, if you talk directly. And the other thing I'd mention is just, yeah, so if it's not a slow, just like general letters of recommendation, um, it's it doesn't necessarily hurt you at all. And I would say the benefit though is if you have maybe like an ED attending that's willing to go to bat for you, definitely some people will look at that. It's not guaranteed. And I've also had like I randomly threw a letter in there just to like beef it up in case, maybe my slow is going to be late just to have as like a backup. Because I lose nothing by asking someone like, hey, you're the like get a division chair from anesthesia. Like I got that. Turns out on an NYU interview, the chairman happened to be like, "Oh, Greg wrote you a letter. Like, how's Greg?" Like you never know out. So, um, it's nice to have. Don't like you know rely on it. But if you happen to know someone and you think that they love you and they'll go to bat for you, a strong LOR, I don't think it'll hurt you. So just throwing that out there.
I totally agree. Like if you have your two slows, like, and you've got two extra spots in your application, you might as well have someone glow about you. And if they read it, great. And there was a question
Oh,
that, oh yeah, sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Last thing. So another cool like trick with getting letters of recommendation, if you have them send it to you after September 27th, this is like what I like to do is let's say you send out all of your applications for interview late, and it's like mid November, which like I should have heard back from my number one program by now, but they haven't gotten back to you. If you have a letter of recommendation uploaded after September 27th, it's a nice little like letter of interest blurb because otherwise you're just saying like, hey, I really like your program, please take me. But if you could say, hey, I know it's hard going through all these applications, and something new about me is I just got inducted into this, or I just got this letter recommendation, I just did this research. That's like a nice way to make it seem like you're not just begging for the interview. Be like, hey, maybe you didn't get the full picture of me, but here's something new that's happened that updated. So that's another way you can use like just a random LOR to like, beef up your application after you've submitted it.
Totally. Or even like a slow that you got from a November rotation or something like that. You should definitely use that as an excuse to email the program director, especially if you haven't gotten an interview yet. The question in the chat was asking about what service I got an O slow on. So mine was actually from two, not even a service, like literally two research mentors. One was from EM and like well known in the EM community, so that was really helpful. Like, a lot of people that I met knew him, and then the other was from internal medicine, but I also did research with her. Hopefully that's helpful. And then some programs have like reputations for the kinds of slows that they give out. I'm not going to name names. You just might hear things from the grapevine, Reddit, your advisors. I would say it's probably most helpful to listen to your advisors because they've heard from students' experiences in the past. But that's probably something to consider. Like if you hear that a program gives like really harsh slows and like doesn't give top scores very easily, maybe like think about how confident you are in your skills, just because this is so stressful.
If you're
Yeah.
confident, that's a plus.
Take it with a
That's
grain of
great.
salt. Yeah, exactly. What do
Exactly.
you have?
There's a lot of like slows where they say that you're the top 10% and they write 100 slows, then people have reputations of only sending 10 slows that have top 10%. Whereas, so I had one particular program have that. And so when they're like, oh, yeah, no, I know this person is really, really objective with their slows. So they knew they weren't just buttering me up. They were like being honest.
That's true. If you get a great slow from one of those difficult programs, then they know you're the real deal. So you just kind of got to weigh your options and take a measured risk. So how many aways should you apply to? And I think this is a hard question. You should definitely aim to have 1 to 2 aways, right? So you really only need one away rotation, one away sub-I. That's in addition to your home or the required one from your institution, right? So in the end, you should have 2 EM sub internships. How many should you apply to? Kind of depends on personal factors, like how confident are you in your resume, in your EM experience. Like I applied to a lot because I actually switched into EM like right before VSLO season and like had to all of a sudden apply to away rotations, and I felt like my resume didn't have a lot of EM on it, and so I wasn't sure how I would do and didn't have a ton of EM experience. Cost is also a factor. Like every application costs money, and you often have to pay for things like background checks and blah 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 that also costs money. And then also like, can you do 3 rotations in a row and like have wellness, and just be on all the time? So that to me was a big factor, and I didn't think that I could do more than 2 sub-Is. And then for acceptances, it's going to be hard because the applications are rolling, which we'll talk about. And that also means that you will hear back on a rolling basis. So you might like get a bunch all at once and be like, whoa, now I have to reject. And like, I'm nervous about rejecting. But the reality is like they're expecting that. You just have to be polite and be timely. You'll have like a 2 week period where you can either accept or decline. Um, but maybe don't apply to so many programs that you're in a position where you're saying no to a bunch of them, just in case down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say for DOs and IMGs that don't necessarily have like home institution, um, specifically at Toro, it's weird. They did it where we don't have to do a sub I that is core, but EM is not considered core, which I think is whack. It is core. But for them, that means I still had to do my IM sub I, somewhere else. And then for me, actually, I didn't really apply to a lot of this load. I personally, I reached out to people I already knew, or programs that I've had interactions with or that are already affiliated with my school. Someone there I think I had some like weight with, secured those early, like my July, August, whatever. Didn't think twice about it. So like I was very lax during my cycle because I was like, okay, I know this program. I already rotated in my 3rd year. So that was like a bonus. That I could just do it again in my 4th year, know the shop. And then the last thing I would say is, yes, burnout's real. But something to consider too is that if you really want like a program that's like a number one, but you haven't been there, it is one of the most visceral and important experiences to just like go, even if it's as like an ultrasound elective or something. That's very chill, but you can get the real feel of the shop and like trying to see what the patient load is, the population, how the attendings talk to you. All these things are critical in making your decision about residency. So if you want to, because I schedule one in December and people are like, oh my God, you're crazy. I'm like, oh, actually, I enjoyed doing it. I actually played a lot to my advantage because now I know that's my number one program.
Very true. Like it really is an addition, and you're never going to get like that experience otherwise. All right. So the timeline, July through September is prime time because residency applications go live to programs at the end of September. And so you want to make sure that you can get your SLO before that. If it's possible to do a home rotation, definitely do that before doing your first away, because your home will kind of ease you in to the process, and you'll kind of learn a lot of skills that you can take to your away rotation. And then I'll let James talk about his chest move tip.
I mean, to be fair, it's not my chest move tip. It was literally what a program told me off the record, which he said, if you really, really like a program, outside of the reasons I said, which is to know the culture of the shop that you're going to, it's great to do one December or January because in most cases it's like Valentine's Day, ironically, that they rank you um, based on your interviews and everything. So if you are a December or January rotation, you are the most recent person that's in their memory. If you kill it, and they're thinking, oh my God, who is like that person from July? They will still remember you, but you'll be in the front of their memory. So if you kind of know, like, I love the the program for whatever objective reasons, and you're like, I want to see if I really, really like them. I think doing one in December or January that shows good attitude, and also you're going to be the most recent person that they saw.
Totally. And
Less
they'll,
competition too.
right, because like we said, prime time is over the summer. So you'll stand out more. Awesome. And then in terms of like the nuts and bolts, as third years, so that calendar year, that you'll be doing your aways and applying, it really starts that January. Um, Basically, programs go live on VSLO, and they just pop up kind of whenever they want. So it's important to start looking now, pretty much. And these applications are first come, first serve. So being that person who like is scrolling on VSLO and sees when it opens and can get the application right away will really help you secure a spot. I would say most of them, like the bulk of them, actually come out in March, but every year it just gets earlier and earlier, and there'll be that rogue program that like opens in January. And the one that I did actually opened in January, and I was not ready, and I was like, ah. So yeah. And the VSLO portal is like infamous for being kind of not user friendly. You can't really like sort the list of programs. So you literally just keep checking by like EM as your specialty and like maybe geography to look for certain programs. And you just have to keep checking to see if something new has been posted. Some programs put the dates that they're going to open their application, which is super helpful. And it might also be on their websites, although they often don't update their websites. So you just have to use all of these tools, make a spreadsheet, and like try to stay on top of when things are going to open.
Also, if they send you a rejection and it's like, they don't have the dates that you're looking for, it does not hurt to just shoot an email to a program director at some point, even, whatever, they're busy or something. You can wait till, May or something when things ease up, and just be like, hey, I was interested that these dates, do you have other dates that are available? You're still gonna have a pretty fluid second half of your semester, up until January. So that's actually what I did with New York Presbyterian Queens, was everyone jumped on to the early dates, and I just saw that they had an opening for a later date. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll take the December one, and it worked out to my advantage. But I wouldn't have gotten it through this low if I didn't shoot an email. So you lose 100% of the shots that you don't take.
Totally. I mean, there's really no harm at that point. Okay, this is really hard. And like, how do you choose what away program you want? And there's a million factors, and your mentors are probably going to be like, just think about, what you want. And you're just like, I have no idea. I'm a third year. I don't know anything. At least that's how I felt. I didn't really know what people meant when they said county versus community versus academic settings. And honestly, the reality is that these aren't hard boxes. Like, programs aren't necessarily always like shunted into these specific categories. But it's loosely true. And if you, for example, like I do, go to a super academic institution, it could be helpful to like try a county program or a community hospital and see if that could be your vibe, because otherwise you just wouldn't know. Geography is also really helpful. Like, is there a place that you can see yourself living? Because like at this point, you're thinking about residency. Like this is like an audition, for a residency spot. And so try living somewhere that you are interested in. How difficult is it to get in a way at a specific program? Is it kind of a crapshoot? I don't know. I kind of think it feels like a crapshoot, like this whole first come, first serve thing. Like, is it really that you get your app in first and you get the spot? I mean, I don't know how they pick, but from what I've heard and experienced, I think that's true. Um, and then like there's actually specific, sometimes specific applications for like URIM. And so I would definitely look into that if you qualify, because they can also be like financial assistance in housing too. Are there any standout programs that provide great education or experiences? Kind of like through the grapevine. You can like click this Reddit link when I send the slides out after, at your own risk. And then would you recommend to schedule a sub-I or an away during the spring? This is kind of like what James already talked about. Um, I wouldn't do it necessarily that early. Like I think the prime time of like June through September is probably best, just because March, April, May is like so early. They like you know, the recency effect, you might kind of get forgotten and you're not rotating with like the main cohort that they think of when they think of who's going to apply that season.
Yeah. Um, and specifically for my lovely DOs and IMGs, if you are in the house, I was just gonna say that a factor to consider is how often or if they do take IMGs or DOs. If you can get onto ERAS or it can be from a senior. I'm sure you all know fourth year that lets them like they'll let you use their credentials to get into the application or the ERAS Residency Explorer tool. There's another one too. I forget the name of it, but it has the stats on what the percentage, the average percent of DOs and IMGs that are taken in IM, and they compare that program to it. So you can see like, hey, they've taken 2% over the last like 4 years. Like, you know, maybe it's not worth the $15. Maybe it is. It's up to you. But if you see it's like 60%, then you already know that they already show a lot of love to your non-traditional MD applicants. Another thing I was going to touch on is just the geography. On your ERAS, it's going to show like your geographic preference, and you get to write that in. But more so, like programs are smart. They can see, hey, Emily did 8 things in New York, or James did 8 things in New York. They really want to do New York, you know, like I did 5 EM rotations in New York and I did none anywhere else. So when I did my application, I thought, okay, I just threw a few, you know, spitballs out to like one in Denver, one in Philly, whatever. Everywhere that is outside of New York, New Jersey, I applied 10 places outside of New York, New Jersey. Only one gave me an interview. I applied to like 30 places or like 40 places out just in New York and New Jersey, and 73% of them gave me an interview. So it's not like I'm a different person, but it definitely geography does make a difference. So if you want to apply in like California, then you know it might help to actually have rotation in California.
Totally. And you know, it's a lot to weigh. Like it would be a lot more cost effective to do a rotation in New York if you already live in New York. And I feel like that's a totally valid reason. Um, but if you can, you know, get yourself, if you do think that you want to apply more broadly, it can be helpful to go out of state, which is what I ended up doing. That's kind of why I picked Penn, because I wanted to check out Philly, and kind of send a signal that like I may not want to just stay in New York, just because I didn't know at that point. And so it could be nice to just keep your options open. This is just kind of what the VSLO portal looks like. I just screenshotted this for my own. It stands for Visiting Student Learning Opportunities. It's for all away electives, so across all specialties in a whole bunch of institutions. And so you'll just filter for EM through here, and you will be so sick of seeing this very soon. So like we said, most programs, oh yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, and don't be afraid of emailing a program director or a program coordinator or a clerkship director if they gave you their email. If anyone gives you their email, it is fair game, baby. You just like you can send them whatever. Hey, I know we worked together one time, but you gave me your email, so I just thought I'd reach out. Could I rotate at your shop or something? Or someone in this program used to work at this program, suggested I reach out to you. They gave me your email. Can like so you can go through personal connections as well. So if you happen to like that happened with me with what is it? One of my programs was I met with someone at Kingsbrook who worked at MIMO and they hooked me up with that. So I just send a program director an email and like, oh my gosh, yes, great, fine.
Yeah, totally use your connections. I think that's true in like the general app season as well as VSLO. One thing I would caveat is like that's kind of like this fourth bullet here, like reaching out to programs prior to applying. I wouldn't like cold email the program director. I would, like James said, like only reach out if you have like a connection. You could, I would say the person that you should be reaching out to, like if you have questions, would just be the coordinator who handles like OA electives for their EM program or their like med school. They might not be great at responding. Like I remember emailing and asking questions and people like took forever to respond if they even did. It's like, again, you're gonna feel a little frustrated. It's not the most organized. And I don't think that they love getting emails from students about this. So yeah, maybe just definitely don't like cold email the program directors or even like faculty, I'd say, unless like you have a connection. Okay, so most go live in like March or even April, but I bet you some are open now if you go on VSLO. Apply early. You can also apply to multiple dates at the same time. Like VSLO will give you the opportunity to pick like in order of preference, like which months you want to. So if you could apply to the same program for both July and August if you wanted to. Are there EM programs that aren't on VSLO that have away rotations? I know that there are programs not on VSLO like in the country, but I don't know of any ones in New York. But some might require materials or forms that are not on VSLO, so make sure you go on their website as well. Like you're going to be doing too much. You're going to be like doing all the VSLO requirements, and then you're going to make sure that you go to their website and make sure there's not like some sneaky extra thing that they want from you, because there might be. All right. And then what are some helpful tips students wish they knew prior to submitting apps? Just like, yeah, definitely timing, like be like just be try to be that person who like gets it in on day one. Um, and then the requirements. Like it's not going to be as easy as like the app goes live and like you can just apply. Like there's a lot that you need to sort of get prepared in advance. And so I would do that now if you haven't already, particularly like health clearances. Like you might, I think I needed like a Hep B series again because I didn't have titers or something. And that
It's
like
always something, yeah.
always something.
Yeah.
And then there's like different health forms, like there's the AMC health form, but then some programs like my OA rotation had their own health form. So I had to do both. Trainings, make sure you have a CV. I didn't end up needing a letter of rec, but like some want you to submit a letter of rec from, you know, an EM attending or someone. Transcripts that can take a while. That took my school like 3 weeks to get to me. And like background checks. I did so many background checks and paid money for them. I don't know if James, if you have other like things that they should get together now.
No, I think you nailed on the head. It for me it was the health forms because yeah, you're right. Like I had multiple health forms I had to fill out, and it's like each time you go to your doctor, it's like another 2 hours. So just get on top of those and make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. I'm not the best at that, but you know, do as I say, not as I do, right?
Totally. And like, I definitely can identify as a procrastinator, but I really had to like get on it for this, just because it's worth it. Um, and then when do you hear back? Like we said, it's rolling apps, rolling decisions. The earliest I ever heard back was mid-March, which is like a pretty fast turnaround. And I think they definitely start for the earlier spots accepting around then. Oh, and I applied for July, so that's when that was my timeline. Right. Okay. Just some miscellaneous like tips and questions that we sometimes get. Um, Really, really important. You might actually be given a residency interview during your OA rotation, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm just a third year or I'm just a fourth year, and like I'm not in the residency mindset. Um, I remember I like mine kind of came as a surprise. Like it was like a few days before, and they were like, hey, we're gonna interview you next week. So bring a suit with you wherever you go and just be ready that you might have to do that. yeah, this time period will keep you on your toes. But it's kind of good because that means that you automatically got an interview. And the stakes will be different. The expectations will be different because they're not expecting you to be a seasoned interviewer. You should still like try to do your best, but it's kind of nice to not be up against like people who've been interviewing for months. Some have an end of rotation exam. So if that's a factor for you, like you can probably see that on the VSLO site. And that will actually be a part of your slow grade. Um, a nice hack that some people like think about is that you can actually see how many sub-I spots are available for each program. So that means that you can see how many students you would be competing against during that month. So are you going to be like ranked against like 5 other students or like 20 other students that month? Housing, they really don't typically provide housing except for some of the URIM ones. So definitely look out for those on VSLO or on the websites. But you need to just find it yourself. Like if you have a friend in the area, you can crash on their couch or just like sublet through like emailing like school email lists, Facebook groups for the city. And there's a website called Rotating Room that people use as well. Advice or experience with HPSP military students who get deferred, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I don't think James does either.
Nope.
The best way to prepare for sub-Is, I really liked MRAP podcasts. They have like a C3 series that's really good, and it comes with like your MRA membership if you have one. MRA Basics Guide, like little booklets. EM Clerkship podcasts are free. Like there's a ton of materials online. I don't know if you use anything, James.
Oh, yeah, no. They've all saved my ass multiple times. You'd be surprised. And if you're traveling, just pop it on while you're like taking a subway or driving. Um, the little booklet, it's super useful because when you're going, defines everything based on chief complaint. So like it's a super useful guide. Highly recommend. It's like, I don't know, like $10-15 on Amazon. Just get it because like um it really broadens your differential. Like you might think you have a broad differential, it has a broad differential, and it tells you the next steps, which is like, golden gravy for like a lot of attending. So like, so what would you do next? It's like I would get CT not CT head non-con. Like, of course we know that, but it's nice to have it there because you're gonna like freak out when you're like talking to an attending for the first time. And then the EM clerkship podcast, I actually really like that. I do listen to MRAP and MCrit. I think they're great. I think for clerkship, it's still kind of like softballing a lot of topics, but it's stuff that is pertinent, and it also gives you just general tips about like how to act on a clerkship and what program directors like. So I would say give that a listen. Zach Bryan's great.
Agreed. Any programs for students that are URIM? Like I said, there are some scholarships available that we can try to send out. The best way to find out if programs will consider DOIMG, and I think James already touched on this, to look at the residency.
Yeah. Resident Explorer, and there's another third party one, but yeah.
Is it the Texas Star one?
Oh my gosh, I don't remember. I stopped looking at it. Like I just have it all on my spreadsheet.
Residency Explorer tool will definitely have it, I think.
It has enough, more than enough.
All right. Some more on just like performance during your sub-I, because people always ask about this. I would say takeaways like know that you're no longer a clerkship student and the expectations are going to be different. Like you're really acting as an intern, hence sub-intern. So take ownership of your patients, right? It's not about how many patients you see per shift. Like it's really not. They don't expect you to see many patients per shift. There are shifts I had where I saw 2 patients in an 8-hour shift and they were very happy with it. It's really that you are like acting as if that is your patient from beginning to end and handling every single thing from, interviewing, note-taking, consulting, rechecking is really important. Don't just like interview them and then kind of like sit back, checking in frequently. Showing interest in, don't ask a million questions, like you kind of read the room and, try not to bug people when they're clearly working, but make yourself seen, let the attending know that you did something. If you, saw the patient and their pain has resolved after they got pain medications, that's a useful update. And like attendings have to record those things. And then they know that you are, still functioning productively. You can help out with procedures. Like residents love when sub-interns take lac repairs off their hands because they take time. Be a team player, like offer to help, but don't like try to take procedures away from people, particularly like the interns are also like trying to get a lot of new procedures. So, know when it's your time and someone offers you something. And then I'll
Mhm.
pass it on to James for some more.
Yeah. I think one of the golden rules that I follow is in terms of what Emily was saying with asking questions is um, can Google answer this for me? And if the answer is yes, then Google it. Like don't just think as the attending as like this encyclopedia because sometimes they don't know and they don't like when you ask and then they'll just like smack you with the do a presentation on it. But the tips I typically give, I have a decent number of people that are my underclassmen that reach out to me, and I've helped a lot of them with strengthening their reviews on their aways or on their what is it on their rotations. And my tips are just being honest, humble, helpful, hungry, and nunchi. Just it's easier to say these things, but just to give you like an example of like these things is like honesty, obviously, never lie about a patient, no matter what. If they're gonna ask you questions like, oh, did you check the patient's blood sugar? And like it's a syncope patient, you should have checked their blood sugar, and you didn't. Just don't lie. Never lie. They know that you're dumb, and we're all dumb. It's better to just admit it. Um,
For
exactly. Um, the other thing too that I would mention is kind of being hungry or like it's a showing interest in learning is what Emily was saying. But there are times when like you can kind of tell when an attending wants you to be like a really good student or really wants you to be like a personable person. And if you think that, then they bring something up, then don't just say, oh, thank you for that information. No, like dig into it, try to understand the mechanism behind it, try to solidify it. I've had sometimes attendings walk by and it's like open on my computer that I have like the research articles open and they're like, ah, this guy's doing it. Um, I would also say, don't be the funny one, don't be the like super cocky one. Don't smack talk. Don't gossip. Um, you'll know if they want to small talk because they'll start small talk. Like you should be competent first. It's not that you should be a machine, but you're not there to be, everyone's best friend. Don't use that to uh cloud your competence or your capabilities. That should only be supplementary. And then the last thing I would mention is it's my mom told me this word in Korean, which is nunchi. It's kind of just like, eyes and ears, reading the room, right? But that is the most important thing. There are times when you should know, okay, to keep your mouth shut or to talk or when you're even invited into a situation. Like there are times when all the residents are going out. If they invite you, go with them, but don't be like, oh, can I come? Like, just try to gauge how everyone's feeling for you. Yeah, I don't have to go into examples of it, but I think you'll figure it out. It's just be honest, be humble, be helpful when you can. Try to look interested because you should be interested. This is your future. And then also read the room. Mention.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also important to remember that like they know where you are in your training, so they're going to adjust their expectations. And you can also help yourself out by signaling that. Like go in and say, this is my first day as a sub intern. And like they will help you out and like show you the ropes. And try to pay a lot of attention in those first few days when it's the beginning and there's some leeway. And just like learn as much as you can so that you can continue to build on those skills and like after week one, like I promise you won't feel like so much of a novice anymore. And like write down like the steps that you took for this type of diagnosis, the steps that you took to like do that suturing, like what did you get, the lidocaine, the needles, things like that, so that you can remember it next time, and anticipate before like someone tells you what to do or how to do it, and that's really how you'll shine.
For sure.
All right. I think that's pretty much all that we have. I wanted to leave some time for questions, but I don't know, James, do you have any like final thoughts that you wanted to pass along before questions?
No, and you killed it. Killed it on time. So yeah, just keep it open. Honestly, we could blab forever probably, but rather just hear if anyone has any pertinent specific things that we can maybe help with.
Yeah, feel free to unmute or write in the chat. Um,
And you don't have to have questions. If anything, it's also a Sunday night, so totally get it.
this is the beginning of a long road of people asking you if you have questions, so.
Oh
I
yeah.
have I have a question.
Go.
I was just wondering if you had, well, thank you. First of all, thank you both for sharing your experiences. It was really helpful. I was also gonna just ask if there are like anything major that you would do different. Like if you could go back and like change something or do something differently, what would that be, if any?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I would have pushed myself a little more to do another rotation at a non-academic or like a less academic site, like maybe something county in particular. Because now I'm in a place where I'm like making residency decisions and considering some county programs, but I can only really imagine and talk to people about what that's like, but I'll never really know. And so I kind of regret sort of not pushing myself to do that before. Um, and yeah, maybe balancing like location too. Like I'm also looking on the West Coast right now, and I didn't know, granted, I didn't know I would be so interested in that, like when the time came. So it's hard to like see the future. But truly think about like how advantageous it can be to get these new experiences and what it says about your application.
Mine's quick. I'm actually really happy with how everything turned out for me. So big picture, I'm actually, I don't really regret much. If there's one thing I did that like definitely I was like, oh man, and something I need to work on is if you think you know an attending's name or a resident's name, make sure you know it. Like you don't just be like, hey, Dr. Blah blah blah, and then it's a different doctor. Um, it doesn't look good, and then it kind of throws your game off for the day. So that's my only piece is like you can always get away with like, hey doc, or hey, you don't even have to say their name. Like they know that you're seeing a bunch of people. So only if you're like 100% sure. Don't if it's like the first or second time you've seen someone you don't know their name for sure. Don't try to say that. I did that once and it killed me.
But
Thank you so much.
we're all human, and there will be times where you feel dumb, and it's okay.
I'm still dumb.
I mean, I have, then you'll, continue your fourth year and like not do anything for a while and be like, how am I going to be an intern in a couple months? But we all get through it, and you will too. I
Ezra.
I
Yeah,
know
I
this
know
is
this is sort of off topic, but any thoughts on third 3 versus 4 year
not
programs?
off
Oh,
topic.
hell yeah. 3 year, 100%. But that's just me. My personal take on it is 3 years plus fellowship is stronger than 4 year, unless you absolutely love the program, right? Like, I'm not taking anything away from any 4 year programs if you love it. Me personally, I'm about to be 30. It's time to get the show on the road. And I also think about compounding interest and how much, 1 year adds up. It does come out to close to like $200,000 that you're kind of missing out on in the grand scheme of things. So I think there's like a Reddit on just like my $200,000 mistake or something. So unless you absolutely love the program, everything about it, my vote is 3-year programs, and then you could buff yourself with a fellowship, um, rather than do a 4-year program. I feel like some of them can be predatory, not all of them, but some can be just like they're looking for boots on the ground.
Yeah, I'd say this is very controversial. Like everyone has a lot of different opinions on this, that are kind of evolving as time goes on. I would say it's less relevant for like picking a ways. Um, People think more about like geography type of program setting, things like that. But, I think this is going to be a really unsatisfying answer, but you kind of have to think about like maybe what you want and where you see yourself. Like if you want to be working in academics and like have a really niche subspecialty, it can be helpful to do a 4-year program for various reasons. It gives you more elective time to figure that stuff out, to do the necessary things to apply for fellowship if you need one. And like you just look more competitive with another year on your belt. If you want to like graduate and get an attending job, it can be a little difficult if like, technically you are new attending, but you're like the same training wise as like a PGY4 at a 4-year program. Like people talk about that. But I think that the reality is like you will get a job, like if you just do well in your residency and um like have the right like things in your application. If you're applying to fellowship, like you can still do that from a 3-year program. So like James said, it's a lot of personal preference. What do you recommend if, I hope that answers your question. Feel free to follow up if not. What do you recommend if your home institution's elective blocks don't line up with the away blocks? So you mean like the time that your school has built into your schedule for away electives like doesn't match up in that prime time of like June through September? Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, Honestly, if wait, so you can't take any EM sub Is between July and September because of your home institution? Is that what you're saying? That might be out of my wheelhouse, honestly, because most people I know, it's like you're able to do some semblance of an EM audition. No, we can. It would just be having weeks of overlap. Oh, so if you have overlap in your schedule, so is this specifically for two? Because if that's the case, just pick the better one. Some actually let you start. What is it like? You can fill in, like, let's say if it's a 2-week stagger, you can do like a 2-week online rotation or something, and then do the next one, and then fill it out with like another 2 weeks at the end. Um, so it's going to be institution by institution about how they handle your scheduling. But I've had that happen where it's like, okay, 4 week, 4 week, 4 week, and then there's like one that's just like off. At the end of the day, for me, I just pick, okay, which is the most important for me right now, and I just pick that one, and then I try to move everything else around it. If you've already accepted the thing on VSLO, then you could always just reach out to the program director, like, hey, by the way, I'm not program director, program coordinator. Be like, hey, I can't do these dates anymore. It conflicts with my schedule. Is it okay if I try a different date? And they'll try to work with you.
One
But yeah,
thing,
I know it's annoying.
yeah, like VSLO will have like particular dates for when the program is offering their sub internship or their away elective, and those are not subject to change. So I wouldn't really ask the coordinator if they can like make an exception or you can have like a custom timeline. Like they really don't do that. Um, it is EM, and so there are some programs that allow you to sort of pick a shift template and like request days off, but like you wouldn't really know that until a little bit later. So I think that's less helpful. I think like probably what James said is the best, where you try to pick what's most important and then work around it, or like do like something virtual, or like have a gap in your schedule where like you're not doing anything. I think would
Yeah,
probably.
I've had gaps, and like that was like July, August, and then a week before my next one, so I had a week off. And then I just had like another 2 months off, like I felt like going to Asia. So like, do the best. I made sure that the number one thing.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Any final questions before we sign off? And y'all can always feel free to reach out if there are no other questions. This is our New York EMSC Gmail. You can also email me personally. I'll let James say if he wants to be emailed or not.
Dude, yeah, you can text me or email me or whatever. I'm open for whatever. I'm just always here to help. I'm throwing my number into the chat. You guys just do me a favor and send your name too, just because I have all these like random numbers in my phone, and I'm trying to get better on that. So feel free to email, text, carrier pigeon, whatever floats your boat.
All right, awesome. And thanks again, James, for helping us out. I think this was a really great panel. The recording will be up on YouTube, and I will send everyone who RSVP'd a copy of these slides as well. All right, have a good Sunday evening, everyone, and good luck securing your away rotations. You got this.
Yeah. Thanks, Em, for leading the charge.
Of course. All right. Good night, everyone.
Peace.